COVID and Guns, a video series brought to you by the Center for Firearms Law at Duke University School of Law. In this series, we interview experts on various aspects of firearms law and policy about the role of guns in the ongoing pandemic. I'm Jake Charles, Executive Director of the Center, and today I'm glad to be joined by David Umani, a professor of sociology at Wake Forest University. Thanks for joining us today, David.
Amazing to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. So first off, can you just talk a little bit about the methodological approach you take to studying firearms?
Sure. Well, I'm trained as a sociologist in a fairly orthodox style, so try to be as scientific as possible in my approach to whatever I study. For the first 20 years of my career, I actually studied the sociology of religion and only came to the sociology of guns when I needed to pivot hard away from the work I had been doing. And so that gave me a real opportunity to become like a graduate student again. So I knew nothing about guns, I knew nothing about the sociology of guns, and so entered the field with my eyes wide open and was very interested to see how much of the field was really dominated by criminological and epidemiological approaches to guns, and that just struck me as at odds with my own personal experience with guns and gun owners. And so, I tried to take the general approach, in addition to being a sociologist, is to understand that for the large majority of gun owners in the United States, guns are perfectly normal and normal people use guns.
Yeah. So there's been some reporting about an increase in gun sales that's motivated at least in part by COVID. Do you have thoughts on what might be driving people to buy guns right now, either first-time gun owners or ones who own more than one already?
Yeah. So I think that when we see dramatic spikes in gun buying in the United States, I think they're generally for two different reasons. And one reason is when people feel like there's going to be greater gun regulation. And I think we see a huge spike after Sandy Hook, when people thought that there were going to be gun bans imminent. And the other time we see a fairly large spike in guns was after the San Bernardino shooting, which I think was the gun buying in that case was really motivated by people's concerns for their safety. So I think with the COVID, it's much more the latter motivation, that people genuinely feel a sense of uncertainty about what's coming, and they want to have a sense of physical security, and that guns in the United States really represent a commonly used means of achieving that physical security.
Yeah. So from your study of the sociology of gun culture, can you talk a little bit about what you think might be some misperceptions from those outside that culture about why people are finding this safety or are going to guns right now during a time of uncertainty and crisis?
Yeah, I mean, I think that some of the misperceptions that people have about people buying guns under COVID apply to people buying guns for defensive purposes at any time. And so, probably the leading scholar in my field, Jennifer Carlson, has written that guns solve problems for people who carry them. But I think that from that point of view, a lot of times the problems that are being solved are seen to be problems of identity. So racial identity, masculinity, addressing issues of economic mobility, downward mobility. And the fact that people may actually feel like they are more secure if they own a gun kind of gets pushed to the wayside. So I think that's a really big misconception. Like, always interpreting gun buying and gun ownership is about something more than simply wanting to ensure your security. And again, I think the security can be the actual physical security that people feel they have when they're able to defend themselves, but it also can be psychological security. And I think that we sometimes trivialize psychological security or ontological security, but as we all have been bunkered down here for months at a time, I think the need for psychological security is something that we appreciate more and more, and whether and this, I don't mean to trivialize this in any way, but whether that's going out and buying 240 rolls of toilet paper or going and buying a firearm, both of those things give people a sense of control in a sense of sort of psychological security that is important to people. So that's one big misconception. I think the other one has to do with the fact that we sometimes like to think of guns in the United States as dying along with the old white rural men who own them. But the reality, and this comes from the National Firearms Survey from 2015, is that there are about 1 million new gun owners every year in the United States. And half, this is from the Pew Research Center, half of all current gun owners grew up in non-gun owning houses. And so there are always lots of new gun owners coming into the fold. And really, I think the US is divided not just into gun owners and non-gun owners, but we really have people who currently own guns, people who don't own guns and who will never own guns, and this group of people in the middle who I call the gun curious, who don't currently own guns, but haven't ruled out the possibility of owning guns in the future. Some of those people have owned guns in the past, others haven't, but those people are always on the brink of becoming gun owners. And in a situation where you have a pandemic and massive uncertainty, something that none of us have dealt with really in our lifetimes, some of those gun curious people, end up becoming gun owners.
Yeah. So that provides a good segue for my last question, and seeing your background there of a trip to the shooting range. Do you have any advice for new gun owners, maybe who haven't been around guns before, or might be having their first experience of getting a gun in the house for the first time?
Yeah, I do actually have so much advice that I wrote it down so that I wouldn't forget anything and also wouldn't go over too much. But I'd say to the new gun owner, as you exercise your right to keep and bear arms, also exercise a proportional level of responsibility for your firearms. And so this means, in the first instance, always keeping your gun secured so that unauthorized people cannot access them either inside your home or outside your home. And this could include your partners, your children, people who come over to visit, whether those are invited or uninvited guests. So always make sure that nobody who you don't want to have access to your firearm can access your firearm. Outside the home, if you choose to carry your gun outside the home, always keep it secured in a good holster. Or if you want to leave it in your car, if you have to do that in order to follow the law, make sure that you have a safe that's secured inside of your car. Your car itself, even if it's locked, is not a holster. Many firearms are stolen out of locked cars every year and make their way into crime scenes. Learn and practice the basic rules of gun safety. So treat every gun as if it's loaded. Keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. Don't aim it at anything that you don't want to destroy, including your own penis. If you're on social media, and know your target and what lies beyond it. Don't administratively handle your firearm if you don't have to. So many people end up with negligent discharges just because they're fiddling with their gun for no reason. So do not handle your firearm if you do not have to. Know the law of self-defense in your state. There's so much misunderstanding about things like Castle Doctrine and Stand Your Ground laws. And honestly, I think some critics of these laws do the public a disservice by talking about them as if they were shoot first and ask questions later laws, which conveys to people who don't know the law that maybe that's how they actually work. That is not how those laws actually work. And so know the laws of your state with respect to self-defense if you are going to use your firearm for self-defense. And then get training. There are, once things open back up, NRA basic pistol, basic rifle, basic shotgun course, NRA first shots courses, or the trainer who works down at your local range. And until you have time to do that, or you have the ability to do that, there are some people who are giving great advice for new gun owners online, and I'd include Active Self-Protection Extra Channel on YouTube and Open Source Defense, both of which you can find by Googling.
Great. Well, that was really thorough advice for the new gun owners, and appreciate your perspective on all these issues today. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And thanks to all of you at home for watching along. Please follow along this COVID and Guns series. You can find the videos on our website at firearmslaw.duke.edu. Thanks very much.